হ্যাঁ, আমি শুনতে পাবো? বামিটা কি দিয়া? কর। চ্যাপ্টার দুটো দুবার তো পাতা দুটো দুবার পর, তারপরে আমাকে মানে বলবে, আমি জিজ্ঞেস করবো, মানে আমি ধরবো, তারপরে পড়া মানে কি পড়ে পড়ে পড়ি। মুখস্থ করা উচিত, গল্প মুখস্থ করে দিবি আর কি। সবাই যদি ডাউন করতে শুনতে পারে, এখান থেকে
Geeta Suchi, the silver medal winner in the last.
Presentation. There is the Good morning all of you, and welcome to the webinar on the Great Conjunction organized by Regional Science Center and Planetarium Calicut. I am Jain Ganguly, and with me Mr. Manas Bagchi. We are all from Regional Science Center and Planetarium Calicut, and we will be speaking something about this conjunction because the event is going to happen tomorrow, and at least a lot of people have shown a lot of enthusiasm to measure the angles between the things as we will be discussing. And tomorrow also we would like a lot of people to go and see this particular event. In Calicut we are arranging this thing in the beach. So sir, how do you feel about the event as such?
Yeah, actually I would like to mention one thing here, that planetary conjunctions doesn't really happen as an event, as if all on a sudden it occurs. It's a very slow and gradual process. During the whole of 2020, these two planets, Jupiter and Saturn, they were pretty close. And during March time also they were close, they were coming closer and closer. What will happen is they will continue in their path and come to the nearest conjunction on 21st. That is why we are calling it an event. But if you actually observe in the sky, you will find that it's a slow and gradual development, and even after that it's not that immediately after the event everything fizzles out and nothing is visible anymore.
Actually, people should keep on observing after that.
Yes,
also, yeah.
Even after that you will see them slowly going apart, but there is one point of course in it, and that is the position and location of the occurrence.
Yeah.
That we will subsequently discuss
Yes.
In our discourse.
Yeah. So now this is in our Science Center and Planetarium. We had done a workshop on cross staff making. So it is something, it is a device, actually it is a mechanical as well as an electronics device. We have proposed two types of designs, and where participants can actually measure the angular separation between these two planets. So this is a picture taken by one such participant from our workshop, and she has captured it using her camera on 1812, and it is quite good, isn't it? By capturing it shows quite enthusiastic students and public who are showing a lot of interest in such types of event. But let us see why such things events occur, and what is so special about if at all we call it as a special, what is it actually, how it all begins. So let us see how actually athletes actually move around in a track. This is a small clipping which we have taken from our 1982 Asian Games. I was in class 4 that time, and PT Usha actually missed the medal by a fraction of a second. But you see that as athletes are moving around, somebody is trying to overtake somebody else. Now, I think this is the catch point which we want to bring out in this particular geometry also, that different athletes are moving at different speeds in different track, and based on their speed, here actually one thing is there, that their speed is not means it is varying. Our planetary speed also vary, but not in the same way as the satellite speed. So let us see how actually the planetary motion occurs. So you can see that here the planets are moving in their respective orbits. Actually all the planets are moving around the sun, and they move at orbits which are somewhat stable. In In fact, they are stable. There are perturbations, but they are stable, and mostly, except our Neptune and our past ex-planet, the so-called Pluto, their angles were a bit, the plane of their orbits are a bit tilted, but most of them are in the same plane as the, in the same plane which we call the ecliptic plane, and this is where actually all the planets are moving around. And in the process, what happens is that you see that these two giant planets, that is our Saturn and Jupiter, they actually try to overtake like the athletes, and at a certain interval of time, say we will come to all these things at a specific interval 19.85 years, we see that they align in somewhat alignment. So, sir, can you just speak something about
Yeah,
all
it
this?
is nothing abnormal. When we all have probably worked on similar problems in our junior classes in mathematics, where two different cars are traveling at two different speeds, and we have to calculate, and they start with a basic difference between them, and we have to calculate when both of them will meet, or whether they will meet at all given their velocities. It is the same thing here. Once you know what is the difference of their average orbital velocities, of course point to point it varies, but if you can calculate the average orbital velocities, and you know how long it will take for the Jupiter to complete one rotation around the Sun, and the same thing what is the orbital period for Saturn, then you can find out that after Jupiter completes one complete turn and 2/3 of the next turn, and Saturn is more or less about 2/3 on completion of its one circuit, they will really coincide. And this thing will change, this thing will occur regularly. So there is a 20-year, almost 20-ish years cycle about it. It is not very abnormal. Such planetary conjunctions, and when we say planet, if we can also consider in them the Sun, Moon, and all, if they are not planets, we definitely know, but of course, if we consider them to be similar objects, then even eclipses are similar phenomenon. So all such alignments, they regularly happen, all such occultations, they regularly happen, we give different names to them. And a very interesting observation is somewhat about last one decade or a little more than that, when we studied our own Indian scriptures written in different vernacular, particularly in one book in Kannada, it is found that our ancient astronomers have also talked about such conjunctions. They used to call them Samagama or Ati Samagama. When they are very, very close, they used to call it Ati Samagama.
And one such, I think, Yuddha also they used to call between.
Yes, they used to call it Yuddha also, and as if it's a struggle between the celestial objects. So these things were common, and even in our stone inscriptions in some places they are mentioned. Of course, probably they were not meant for doing astronomy, but they were celebrations of certain events, and they were celebrations of certain winning of war and all that. But while doing so, they were so meticulous in mentioning their dates that they tried to mention also the celestial events that were happening at that time, and accordingly those things came under proper mention, and they have been recorded. So it's not that people have not observed it. It has been observed, such conjunctions have been observed throughout the period of history, and yes, it is interesting, but though if we try to find out too much meaning in it, probably there's none. But it is interesting event to look at. How it folds out is very interesting, that far off two planets or two celestial objects rotating in their own orbits come close, and actually they don't come close, even they appear to come close only in terms of angular distance. In terms of their real distance, they are quite far.
They are in their respective orbits.
Yes, they are in their respective orbits, and which are quite stable.
So as you can see in this picture, the orbital period of the planet Jupiter, the largest planet, the gas giant in our solar system, it's 11.86 years, or around 4,332.59 days. So naturally per day how much it can move, we have calculated it, and similarly we have the orbital period of Saturn, which is also a gas giant, very large, one of the second largest planet in our solar system. Its density is very lesser than water in fact, and it is 29.46 years, and it also moves as has been shown in the slide, per day how much. So based on all this calculation, actually it has been found out that around 20 years, that is 19.86 years, they get aligned, and that is what is called as a great conjugation. So we will come back to it again.
Conjunction.
Conjunction, yes, conjunction. So now what happened is that let us speak a little about our zodiac. Now this particular this Jupiter and Saturn, at present it is in Capricornus. It is in the constellation of Capricornus. Now all these planets are in a particular actually it is in a particular all movements are surrounded by particular constellations. So as viewed from the Earth, these planets appear to move in certain constellations, certain groups of stars, and based on which actually lot of human systems like calendars and all are made, and lot of festivals are put, and you can see that
I think this demands a little explanation.
Yeah.
That since almost all the planets and their satellites, they tend to move more or less in a plane, which is a plane. So that is why if we extend that plane outside right up to the celestial sphere, the star patterns or asterisms on which they ultimately meet, we find them to be a belt, and that is why when we are rotating in that plane, it appears as if in the sky the sun and moon and the other planets, they are always following a particular path. We call that path in the sky the zodiac, and since it would be around us 360 degrees, if we take their speed, particularly the sun's motion is considered, and it is considered that one area of in that belt that the sun covers in 1 month, that is considered to be one zodiac and zodiacal sign.
Yeah.
But since Earth has got a precision also, this zodiac is, yes, it is stable more or less, but that too changes. Earlier we used to know that there are only 12 zodiacal asterisms, but now even Ophiuchus comes into it, so it is 13. So the people who try to associate certain kind of fatalism and certain kind of future predictions with all these,
totally
those
unscientific.
are, yes,
Totally
that is
unscientific.
that has got no connection, no relation. But so far the positioning of the planets are considered, it is helpful to think in terms of zodiacal signs, and accordingly we can very easily identify them in the sky, and we can very easily talk about it by saying, as if we are saying right now, that they are in Capricornus.
Yeah.
So you just go out, find the asterism Capricornus, and you can tell where it is.
Yeah.
That is how it is easier for communication, but otherwise digging up too much meaning into it would be futile.
Yeah, yes. And as we have already said you that these planets are moving in their respective orbits, they are at varying distance from the sun, and they are moving at a particular, means they are moving at an average velocity, which though fluctuate because the orbit is elliptical or oval, the speeds also varies. There are certain formulations through which actually we can, it follows the Kepler's law, so we can calculate the speed at a particular point in its orbit. But on an average actually we can see that how long it stays in, and it can be calculated, and we can find out how long it stays in each zodiacal sign, as I explained to you just now. So Jupiter actually stays for around 1 year, Saturn stays for 2.5 years, and Sun and Moon are very small in this day, 1 month, and say Moon stays for 2.5 days. The Moon moves out through the sky, we see them. So this is the important, this is what can be assigned to the zodiacal sign.
This in a way is also a reflection of the distance between us and
yeah.
these celestial
Because-
objects.
because
The farther the object,
it's slower.
the more time.
In fact, when we
it
move in train, we can see all these the
Yes,
trees and all. They
exactly.
move very far away. They move very slowly, but
Yes.
nearer things, objects
Yes.
move very faster to us. So that is. So this is what if somebody would have observed this for a certain duration of time, say from November to 21st, up till that it is even shown here, you will see that the separation, that is separation between Saturn and Jupiter, it goes on decreasing, and people were trying to measure and actually calibrate and measure and find out whether these measurements are tallying with the theoretical measurements. That is just an activity. It may not have a great scientific significance, but still as a scientific activity, as a activity for students and amateurs, people can do all these things.
I
and-
would exactly say so. I
Yeah.
definitely con that if you can find out that our predictions exactly match with the experimental observations, that is a corroboration of our solidity of our theory as well.
Yes, yes.
Because that shows that we understand the motions and the dynamics exactly.
Yes,
And the way we in fact, in physics, it is the basic objective of any physics endeavor is to predict a system.
Yes.
And we can predict only which is predictable. We try to understand the laws and rules, and if we understand them well, then we can predict them with certain kind of accuracy. Here it is seen that we can calculate it with fair degree of accuracy,
Yeah.
and very correctly we can assume things.
In fact, I remember Feynman, one of the greatest physicists, he says that a scientific theory is valid. How beautiful the theory is, how mathematically elegant the theory is, it is valid until it is corresponds to a experimental
Exactly.
experiment.
Exactly.
Once it
That
is
is
out
the
of
value of
experiment,
the
it has to be thrown out.
experiment.
So,
Yes.
okay, these are the good things which we can do with an open lab. Anybody can do with all these things. So before moving further, let us we are measuring, I have shown you in the last slide, we were measuring the separation. Now how actually people measure the separation? For a common man, I think we will just give a small thing. See, in sky everything is an angular measure. We don't have centimeters, meters, kilometers in the sky. All the measurements because everything is modeled on a sphere, so everything is at angle. So we have this angle of 1 degree, and we know that one circle is 360 degree. So on a circular scale which we call, each of this angle can be further subdivided into 1 arc minute. So 1 degree is subdivided into 60 arc minute, and 1 arc minute is subdivided into 60 arc seconds. So here you can see on that particular scale, a moon is around half a degree or 30 arc minute. So that is the way. So when we speak about say 0.1 degree apart, so you have to look at from that particular perspective. They are so nearby. So this is how actually we measure the elevation from a particular, see, this is the horizon where actually things rises and sets, and this is the elevation. So for this particular conjunction, visibility of the conjunction in the evening at around 7 o'clock, it will be around 23 degrees in the southwestern part of the sky. So you have to look at those angles only, those elevated angles, and you have to plot out. It will be bright enough to see there. And to see, because always it may not happen that you have to have a sophisticated instrument or a crossbar. You can use your fingers, use your hand to actually measure certain angles. So in astronomy, this amateur astronomy, actually this is quite convenient, so that we have one finger, as it is shown in this picture, we have one finger corresponds to 1 degree, say 3 fingers 5 degrees, and so on. So you can actually find out though you can't very precise small separations like what we are trying to do in this particular conjunction. You can't do it with these types of crude ways, but anyway you can do such activities for other objects in the sky. So that is the reason actually we have included that. And you see that there are certain, for example, I have shown you that how moon is a half a degree, but that also varies depending on where the position of the moon is, whether it is in apogee or perigee, or and how whether Earth is in aphelion or perihelion. So all these factors matters to get the angular size of the moon. So you can see that the moon appears at a certain its angular size increases. as we
Simply speaking, if it is closer, it
Yeah.
appears bigger. If
Yeah.
it is farther, it appears smaller.
Yes.
It is as simple
as that. Yes.
So when the moon is at the closest distance, it appears in a sky, even its angular diameter appears to be a little bigger than when it is
And
farther off.
one common thing which people normally ask is that when moon rises certain times, we see that the moon is very big, but actually that is an illusion. Actually, it is,
That is an atmospheric effect because of the density of the
and
atmosphere.
neighboring trees and objects and all, it
Yes.
appears bigger.
It's
So
a
that is not
comparison.
yeah.
It is not really a physical effect.
Physical effect. And for this particular this is the actually as we have already said you wherever these are there. So you can see the position of the moon is in a small crescent phase, and we have Saturn and Jupiter. It is in the Capricornus. It is near the Capricornus, or just in the boundary of the Capricornus, and there are other constellations, and you can see that the altitude is around 23 degrees. So you have to look at in the southwestern
Here
sky.
is a question.
Yeah.
Actually, when should you look at it? That is an important point.
Yeah.
The point is, we cannot see other objects in the sky unless and until the sun is down at least 6 degrees below the horizon.
Yeah.
We call that civil twilight.
Yeah.
So when the civil twilight sets in, then the object must be high up in the sky to facilitate us to observe it.
Yeah.
But the problem with this particular thing is that if it is within 10 degrees of the horizon once again, then in almost all the cities and all the real scenarios, all the household scenarios, there are so many plants, there are so many houses. Anything below 10 degrees is a difficult object to look
Yes.
at and watch. This is just barely at that level. So when the civil twilight happens in our place or in most of the places in India, this particular combination, the Saturn-Jupiter duo, right now is close to 20 degrees or so, and it will come down fast towards the western side because of the rotation of the earth. They will set, and they will set early. In fact, the real conjunction on 20, but I mean not real, I would say the peak conjunction on 21st December is likely to happen at 11:50,
Yeah.
if I am
Yeah.
not
Yeah.
wrong.
Yes,
11:50, right?
yeah.
But even in our Calicut or Kozhikode,
It will not be.
the Jupiter will set somewhere about 7:30 or 8.
No, but 8:20 precisely.
8:20, okay.
Precisely.
So precisely 8:20 the Jupiter sets.
One thing I would like to say, we in this equatorial zone, we are lucky enough actually to see. If you are in Canada or USA, actually you can't see this event very properly. First of all, atmospheric problems there. It's very cold and it's quite misty. And secondly, it is not in the sky. It sets by say, 6 o'clock or something. I think it sets there.
Yes,
So,
even in the northern part of our
Yeah.
country it sets earlier.
yeah, 7:14
So
Calcutta. and all.
here in south we are that way a little bit favored that we can see it a little longer. So up to 8:20, and even from Bombay the setting time is 8:20.
Yeah.
It would be close by. So that's the fact. So that is the place where you should look at if you want to really see it. You must look at the western side of the sky around 20 to 30 degrees, and you must look close to Capricornus, and sea beach should be a right place to
Provided the beach is in the
try the
western
observation,
side.
and that is why, because in sea beach you get a far more greater expanse of the horizon than you have in any other place, and that is why from the Regional Science Center and Planetarium Calicut we are planning to organize one watch party at the sea beach itself, but of course maintaining the COVID protocols
And provided clouds do not
and
spoil.
provided of course the weather, the clouds are not there to spoil the party, but we have to maintain the COVID protocols. We have to be careful about that. So maintaining that, we will try to organize an event there with our telescopes. Now this is another important point that I would like to mention, that normally when you look at the planets, they are in the sky in such a position that it would be rather difficult to point towards two planets within the same field of view
Yes.
with a telescope.
Yeah.
When you look at the planets would be far off. So in a single attempt you probably would see only one planet. But since these two planets are in conjunction, they are coming close, it's a great opportunity to look both of them
Yes.
within the same field of view, and that gives us certain kind of pleasure to see two planets so close by. And not only them, if you are lucky enough, if the atmosphere is helpful, if you have a more or less good access to a workable telescope, then probably you will also see the terrestrial the satellites of these planets.
Yeah,
So Jupiter would be accompanied by 4 of its terrestrial satellites.
And try to find out whether you can differentiate the planet, because that is one test of the eye, because it is not perfectly aligned. 1.1 degree difference is there. We will explain
Yes,
it.
and there are several cues actually.
Yeah.
Jupiter would be far more brighter. Whenever two conjunctions happen, and then one of the planet would always be much brighter than the other.
Yeah, yeah.
When the Venus and Jupiter conjunction happens, or the Venus
That is more spectacular.
That-
actually.
spectacular in a sense, a little more brightness.
Yeah.
But here also the Jupiter would appear brighter than Saturn. So the dimmer one you can always identify as Saturn, but Jupiter is accompanied by 4 of its terrestrial satellites, so if you can see them in the telescope, that gives you a confirmatory indication that it is Jupiter.
Yeah.
Titan can be seen with Saturn,
Saturn.
probably one more satellite, so that gives an interesting spectacle, and that changes over time, because the satellites around Jupiter and Saturn, they will change their position so much faster than we normally expect the planets to move in, and that would be quite visible. So overall, it's an extravaganza that is of interest.
Yeah. And now, as we were speaking about this angular separation, we were speaking about it is a small angle. No, this time it is around 0.1 degree. You have to. So you see that. See around. If you, everybody of us are
The peak
familiar.
is 6 Earth minutes.
Yeah, 6 hours. So everybody is familiar with this constellation. This is our Ursa Major, Saptarishi Mandal, or the Great Bear, and we have 2 double star, Arundhati and this one,
Vasishtha.
so or Alcor and Mizar, what it is called. Its separation is around 2 degrees. So it is taken as a test of eye in many cases to find out whether you can resolve it without a telescope. So that is 0.2 degrees. So this is closer than that. So yeah, this is further at us. So that is the reason we were thinking. So now all these things actually, what is a conjugation? Conjunction. I'm sorry, it's not conjugation. Conjunction. So what is a conjunction? So before explaining, because we are saying about great conjunction. So they are using a word called conjunction. So let us just try to focus on what is that particular thing. So you are seeing that in this slide there is something called a word called elongation. Elongation is actually an angle at the earth, from the earth, between 2 heavenly objects in the sky. So that is, for example, here it is say one planet, inner planet, and the sun. So it gives a angle. So that is called an means elongation. Now, if it so happens that Earth is in the center and we have one of the planet. For example, in this case the sun and the planet are opposite to each other, so in this case it is called, or 2 planets are actually aligned here actually, if they are in opposite direction it is called an opposition. If they are in the same direction, for example here sun and the planet are in the same direction, or 2 planets are in the same direction, well, sometimes 3 planets can occur in the same direction, very rarely, so that is a conjunction. But if they are an opposite with respect to the earth, it is called opposition. And if they are perpendicular with respect to the means 2 objects are perpendicular, casting an angle of 90 degree at the earth, it is called a quadrature. So based on this, now I think it is clear that what do we mean by a conjunction. So
if you can go back to the earlier slides, please,
this
I
one,
would like to mention one thing, and that elongation is an important measurement, and not only that, in this particular case it is going to have an impact in the sense that how far the sun is in terms of angular positioning. that gives us the best chance of seeing the conjunction. This time actually, when this conjunction is going to the peak, the sun would be 30 degrees away. Now we can see it best when the sun is on the other side of it.
Yeah.
It's in opposition. Then it is the best chance of seeing it, but this time that is not happening, and that is why we will be able to see it only for
In
us.
fact, many of these conjunction when
Are in daytime.
in daytime or just
Yes.
before the sunrise and
Yes.
after before the sunset
Yes.
or just after the sunrise or something like that. So it gets
that
difficult.
is important. That is why even though the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction has a periodicity of about 20 years, every 20 years it is not visible,
Yeah.
because it happens during the daytime or it is too close to the sun,
Yeah.
and we can't see it.
And this time we are lucky that it is at least we
at
can
least-
see from
yes,
Calicut or in
at
southern
least from
states.
Calicut.
We can see it better.
And because the sun is 30 degrees away,
Yeah.
so it could have been better if it is a little more further, but that
Yeah.
is not the case.
Yeah, yeah. So this is the geometry of our. This is the thing what we will be what is happening this particular time. And these are the actually this is a plot credits to amateur astronomer who has plotted this. You can see the theoretically calculated value date wise is plotted. You can see that it starts from, if you have started observing these two separations from October onwards, it would have been a good exercise. It starts from 7 degree 19 minutes and it goes down to 0.06 minute or so minutes. So you can see that how the separation goes on decreasing, and actually it doesn't end there. You can keep on observing it for a few more days, and you will see that how again it again moves away and separation again increases. So that would have been a more good activity to do.
For the little more involved enthusiasts, I'd like to mention some exercises that can be interesting.
Yeah.
Number one, those of you who has got certain interest in astronomical programming or numerically creating or finding out situations in astronomy, for them I can suggest that with Python you can program the astronomical events very nicely, and there is one library called PyFM, which is this short form of ephemeris. Using that PyFM, EPHEM, smaller form of ephemeris, you can get all the functions ready with which you can calculate such things. Now let me give you an interesting hint at it. When does a conjunction really happen? If you go through the geometry of it, you will find out that when the right ascension of two particular objects are the same,
Matching.
they are matching.
Very nearby.
They are matching. They are said to be in conjunction. The east-west coordinate system actually. The east-west coordinates when they match, then we call them in conjunction. But still, then to find out how much farther they would be, you can calculate the north-south coordinate between them, the difference between them, and when you do that with numerical programming in your computer, you can exactly predict where in past such conjunctions happened and where in future such conjunctions will happen. And there are several such calculations. They are fun, they are also very demonstrative, and I have seen at least one project in which right from the first eddy, the participants of that project, they had calculated all the conjunctions of Jupiter and Saturn right up to 16,000 eddy, and that is very demonstrative. It shows that most of the times Jupiter and Saturn conjunctions happen within 1.5 degree. This time it is 6 Earth minutes, which is pretty close, but sometimes probably there would be a perfect alignment also. So in that case it would become a transit, so to say.
Yeah.
So and here in this picture I would like to mention another thing as a project in this picture, that in this picture it only shows the cosmic dance created by gravity up to the peak of the conjunction. but I would like to tempt people who are enthusiasts to try the simulation of how it is going apart right from this moment to some considerable standard. So probably you can get an interesting pattern if you plot both the approach towards the conjunction and
how it moves
the
out.
diverging
In
away
fact-
from the conjunction.
In fact, this separation can be measured by various ways. One of them was cross staff, and
Cross-staff is a physical measure.
physical measurement. But actually, each of these objects, no, as it was explained to you just now, that each of them have a coordinates, right ascension and declination, and we can measure the separation using spherical trigonometry. So there are formulas for measuring, and theoretically, in that way only, all the programs and all were developed, and you are seeing that predicted values are actually given here. So with that, now this is closer because on December 21st, 2020, we had a conjunction. We will be having the conjunction, and on July 16th, the similar conjunction occurred on 1623. So on July 16th, we had around 0.1 degree, as I was telling, and this time it is 0.06 arc minutes. So it is more closer than that particular conjunction, and that occurred around 400 years back, 397 in precise. So there are other thing. Actually, this angular separation of these two planets have been for 20 years. It has been plotted for various dates you can see here, and their angular separation you can find out. These are all
When you have this image on screen, I'd like to bring in a few more issues. I have seen records in many places in popular level. It is being said that the two planets, the two gas giants will merge together. Now one should not take these statements very literally. The planets are not going to merge at all. They are quite at a distance from each other. It would only appear to have merged in their disks in the sky in angular terms. And that creates another very interesting popular concept, I must say, that whenever anything such happens in astronomy, people immediately try to find out why it is special. Now let me tell you, in astronomical dynamics, yes, very special and rare things happen, but in most of the cases these dynamic things are so much predictable that they happen all the time. They happen at regular intervals.
Maybe it is not visible.
Though it may not be visible all the time, but yes, it happens all the time. So, but what happens is people try to connect them to mythical observations. This particular conjunction has been quite interesting in popular discussions. I'd like to take a minute or two about that. Because this time, even though it is a complete coincidence, this conjunction is happening close to the winter solstice. In fact, on the winter solstice day itself, that is 21st December. It's a coincidence. There's nothing special about it. It just happened to be that this conjunction is happening on the winter solstice day. But we know about mythical stories. We know that it is said in Christian myths that at the time of Jesus' birth at Bethlehem, certain special stars were visible.
It is in popular media now.
Yes, it's in popular media, and they are trying to find out whether this can be an actual astronomical event interpreted accordingly. I studied it a bit, and I'd like to mention a few interesting things about it. Firstly, the Jupiter and Saturn conjunction, when it happens, there is so much of difference in brightness that when they come very close together, you don't see a very bright spark there. More or less, it would be the intensity of the Jupiter that is observable, and that will not be much different. But even though a little bigger and a little different shape, yes, that would be seen. But still, hardly it could be the case of the Bethlehem star as it was mentioned there. Then secondly, Is it a possibility really that such a conjunction happened at that time, or might be a Jupiter-Venus conjunction happened at that time? If you calculate through the possibilities by taking the astronomical software and the ephemeris, you will find out normally the Christian scholars, I am no Christian scholar, but even then I just studied the associated data a bit. The Christian scholars normally assume that Jesus probably was born between 3 to 4 BC, and we don't find any such conjunction. At that time, there was one Jupiter-Saturn conjunction at 7 BC, and there is one Venus-Jupiter conjunction at 2 BC. Probably 2 BC would be a little too late, and 7 BC would be a little too early. And not only that, there was a triple conjunction. Just a little while back, we mentioned that it's a rare occurrence, but not that rare as well. Almost 10% of the conjunctions sometimes happen as triple conjunctions. Not only that, in our Indian scriptures there are mentions that even 5 to 6 planets can be aligned as well. It has happened. It would be certainly rare. It would certainly be not happening at an interval of say 20 years or 40 years, or may even happen in 100 years or so, but it happens. And there is one simulation. If you have an access to any astronomical simulation software, you can try 25th March 185 BC, and you will find out that at one point of the sky you get a conglomeration of 6 planets together. All the terrestrial planets which you can see with almost your naked eye or with a little aid, all of them came together in that position. So there's nothing astronomically abnormal in such case. It's just a play of the gravity and dynamics that it happens here. And really speaking, there is not much point in trying to explain mythical events in terms of the actual observations. Probably the people who created such creative pieces, they look at some real phenomena and then they extrapolate it and then they place it into a different imaginary setting in terms of space and times and situation and even in magnitude. So the direct correlation between all such events in most of the cases will not be very scientifically yielding endeavor.
And in fact, one more thing is that, as normally is being said, that the star suddenly appeared when the, and
yes,
this is not a thing which
so.
suddenly appears.
Planetary conjunctions do not appear
gradually
suddenly.
from few months.
Gradually, not only months, probably throughout a year, because you have seen that Jupiter stays in one constellation for about 1 year and Saturn stays in 2.5 years. So their drifting is very slow, apparent drifting is very slow, and that is why these sudden occurrences do not happen in terms of planetary conjunctions. It could be a planet, it could be some nova, supernova, we never know, but there are no such events recorded as well, and hence we cannot really find out meaning of mythical observations or mythical recordings in terms of real and observable scientific history.
Yeah. And now let us have a simulation of different stations, like from Calicut, how actually if we
we
go.
thought we must present a case that if you are traveling over India, then what would be the position and condition of the conjunction, how you will see.
December month is only presented
Yes.
here. This was Calicut, this is up till 31st, and now we are going to Mumbai. You see that how it is changing from 1 to 31st. We will be going each of these locations.
In each location we show how the position will change, and the quickly passing over object in the sky is moon.
Yeah.
It will briefly appear. Now you are in Delhi. So you can see how in Delhi it will vary over the dates that is shown on the right hand side of the screen. It's coming closer and closer and closer. This is almost a margin. The moon appears and goes, more or less the same thing, but see how close it is towards the horizon. So it will be a very difficult thing to see it a little late in the night.
We are in Haryana now.
It is yes, it is Haryana, and just close to the sunset. You can see it in Kashmir. In Kashmir, here it begins, and then you can see it will come closer and closer, and it will go down towards the horizon as well as. And yes, the moon once again comes and goes. The pattern remains the same, the sky pattern remains the same, only the timing varies, and the duration through which you can see it, that varies. And you can see that in northern zones the setting time is earlier. So here in south we are favored a little, so you can see a little later than is expected from other parts of India. And after Saturn, the Jupiter will Jupiter will set earlier, and the Saturn will follow it within 1 minute.
Yeah.
So it's pretty close. Yes, the next.
Yeah. So now we see that. See, we still in this time, this we have 0.06 arc minute separation. Then in 400, even 397 years back, we had 0.1 arc minute separation. So when actually it will be perfectly zero, means it will just overlap from the Earth. Now it has been calculated, and it has been found out that in June 17th. 7541, that is 5521 years later. I hope
a good time to live up to.
I hope I don't know, humanity should be there, then these two planets will be certainly aligned, with perfectly aligned. So
Not
that is
much to it for.
yeah.
Not much to it.
And then we have some other, as we were describing you, that we have other conjunctions also, not only Jupiter, Saturn, like we have Mars, Venus, and their respective dates in nearby, that is the 2020 and 2022 is given to you. We have Mars, Venus next year, this 2021, then Mars, Saturn we have, then Venus, Jupiter we have, Mars, Jupiter we have. So all these are conjunctions.
Are they daytime or nighttime conjunctions?
That time actually we have to find out. The date I don't have now, but these dates we have the conjunction that we have to see. And we were speaking about triple conjunction. You just now explained about 5 to 6 planets aligning together. So triple conjunction last it occurred in 1981, and the next will be occurring in 2223. So anyway, that is not so nearby. It is also a thing. So before we, I think this is the this one. Can you just elaborate on this one?
This is an interesting observation. Actually, since Jupiter and Saturn, they are the biggest planets in our solar system. When their conjunction happens, it is called a great conjunction.
Jupiter means Kepler actually labeled it as a
Right.
called it as a,
And Kepler, while formulating his theory, he could exactly find out that such conjunctions may happen, and it will happen. And he also calculated from this image on the screen, you can find out it is an illustration from Kepler's book The Stellar Nova, which was published in 1606. And interestingly, you can point out perhaps that this was even before Galileo's observation of the sky at 1609. So even earlier to Galileo's observation, Kepler predicted that such conjunctions will happen, and he shows how successive Jupiter-Saturn conjunctions will come up, and they can always be plotted. If they are plotted on a zodiacal circle, then they will appear as if one triangle is rotating slowly,
and is
shifting. There is a sequence shift in that, and that shows the power of theory and imagination, and the power of unreasonable power and beauty of mathematics, which can exactly predict such situations. So that is why we included this thing, because we felt it important to show that Kepler is the person who not only properly calculated the dynamics, who predicted such conjunctions, and who also gave a name labeling this particular conjunction a great conjunction, what he said. Well, today probably we don't see anything much spectacular, interesting, but nothing spectacular that way. But at Kepler's time, it was pretty remarkable that in his head and by analyzing his data, he could reach up to such conclusion.
Yeah. So now I would like to show one one small animation which we had. See, there is a page, you can go through this page, spark.rice.edu, and you have a good article
It is the
called
Rice University astronomy page.
Yeah.
Where they mention and show many calculations.
They have
of similar
beautifully done
conjunctions.
analysis for a common era of 3000 up till 3000, and what we want to show you here is actually the animations with simulations which they have done. So you can see this is very well done. So I would like to show this to our visitors, see how well they have animated the full sequence, and you can see that how the alignment occurs as it goes through the different
So the
cycles.
conjunction 0, conjunction 1 and conjunction 2 are shown.
Yeah.
That is during one complete rotation of Saturn, we are likely to see these many conjunctions where where Earth and Jupiter will align with it. So similar simulations can be created for other celestial objects as
Yeah.
well.
So,
We encourage you to go through the detail and find out how mathematically you can achieve them. You can program it yourself, you can create such animations yourself, and those will be
these
very
are the
good
activities
exercises.
which should be taken up by actually
Yes,
enthusiasts
one can
of the
understand
science.
it, how it can be done.
So theoretically we come to an end for this webinar, but let us take some questions if somebody has any questions. So I think Joel, can you just let us go to the other one. Where is the thing? OBS. Yeah. Just a minute. Just a minute. Just a minute. Let us. This is okay. Fine. Okay. Fine. Okay. So yeah. If you have any questions, we can try to answer you if we know. And so yeah, please. Anybody. You are not audible. Can you just come to range?
The audio is coming.
Yeah, yeah. Now it is fine. You can speak.
Hello,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It is fine.
sir.
Yeah, please speak.
Sir, I was asking you,
Yeah.
what was that website or that you have shown us now?
Oh, I will
What
do.
was that? The Pararise.
Yeah, I will give you the link in the chat box. You can go through it. Okay, chat.
Okay.
Yeah. So there
It is
actually.
the Rice University astronomy page. If you go to here, we give you the link. We have actually given the link which you can follow. But even apart from that, if you are interested, you can always go to the Rice University page, and they have a very good astronomy page covering the astronomical events that is happening all the time. So this is one of such pages where they have dealt with this particular conjunction event. Right? It is right in your chat box. So if you can see the chat box, you will find out the link.
Any other questions? Okay.
Sir, what's the exact timing of the conjunction from the Mumbai or from Sangli?
See, from exact timing actually is 11:50 in the night, and it is not in the
Let
sky.
me tell you one thing.
Yeah, yeah.
Huh?
The peak conjunction will happen at 11:50, right? By night. 11:50 by night, it would be the closest. But you can see it from Mumbai, say 5 p.m. to 8:20 p.m. But 8:20 would be very, very close to horizon. If you have a clear horizon view from any position that you are, then you can see it up to 8:20, right? After that it will go below the horizon. But let me tell you, you don't have to wait that far. Even close to 5 p.m. you will see more or less the same scenario as you would be able to see at 11:50. With naked eye you cannot make any differentiation between the peak conjunction and the conjunction approaching it.
Okay.
Yes,
You
thank
have-
you, sir.
yeah.
And sir, actually I have a telescope with power 10x. It's not visible very clearly. What should the exact power to see that conjunction very clearly?
See, conjunction actually, since these are bright planets, you can see it directly.
We see that with the naked eyes, but from telescope, what should be the power of that eyepiece?
Telescope actually, what you have to put the field of view, say you have 10x or like that, that is fine, but morely actually you have to have a bigger mirror diameter. What is your mirror diameter, or what is the aperture of your telescope? You, which, what
4
is it?
inch or
3 to 5 centimeters, sir.
No,
Maybe.
I think that is not the correct one. Is it 3 to 5 centimeter? Is a very small aperture.
Actually, I bought that for that transit of Venus.
How much you paid for that? What is the cost of that telescope?
Vigyan Prasad, sir. From Vigyan Prasad, they have given us.
Okay, that is fine, but if it is a small aperture telescope, anyway, for this particular case it is fine. You will see some bright because they are quite bright. But if it is a bigger telescope only, you can see. But here, what is the advantage of seeing this through a telescope is not the actual separation between, that you can always appreciate, but they are small. But you can see some satellites of those planets involved, like Saturn and Jupiter. Their Jovian satellites and Saturnian satellites, you can see them through a telescope.
Let me mention you one thing. More than the zoom power, the 10x or 20x or so, it is important for a telescope to have a bigger aperture. So we will suggest that if you think of future, even from the home use, it's better to have a 4-inch telescope. Close to 4-inch, 6-inch should be even better. But they will, the bigger you go, they will be costlier. But I think that 4-inch telescopes are quite affordable, and if you can have a good 4-inch, and I would suggest in India we get a very good brand called Celestron. Celestron make telescopes are quite good. So if you can have anything such, then I think it would be good watching tool.
It is a good thing. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Anybody else? Okay, so I think we can conclude it. It is quite, we have gone quite long, from 10 to 12. So thank you all of you who have participated and who have come and joined and who have left, or whoever is it. So we have participated in this event, and I hope you will be enjoying this particular conjunction, the Great Conjunction. Don't miss it. And if you are in Calicut, just come opposite to Corporation Building. We will be ready with our telescopes, and probably we will webcast it, we will try to project it, whatever possible we will do, provided of course cloud doesn't spoil the full event. So thank you very much. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
এইটাই তো করতে হবে।